State lawmakers have until the end of May to wrap up some major issues, including the eviction moratorium dilemma you just heard about, as well as hammering out the state's budget and dealing with ballooning pensions. Here to talk about that and much more are State Senator Jason Barickman, a Republican from Bloomington, State Representative Tom Demmer, a Republican from Dixon, State Representative Anna Moeller, a Democrat from Elgin, and State Representative Shawn, a Democrat from the west side of Chicago. Welcome all of you back to Chicago tonight. I want to start with that eviction moratorium. Representative Ford, about $1.5 billion in aid here for renters that might be months behind on their rent. Is that enough to help some of those renters that are really struggling out there?
It's not enough, but it is needed. And I think that we will find that because the governor and the federal government and Springfield came together as a group bipartisanly to make this happen, I think we're in good shape to remedy some of the problems.
So the moratorium will ease out once it ends in August. Senator Barickman, what about for landlords? And we know renters have struggled for a long time, but if they're not paying, that means lots of landowners are not getting income to pay their mortgages or the costs that they have. Is there anything to help them out?
Well, yeah, and I think everybody's going to breathe a sigh of relief as this thing starts to get back to normal. There's eviction cases that have been stuck in court for months or longer. That process will start. I think it's going to be a bit overwhelming for the courts, but we've got to see it begin. There's going to be required cooperation between landlords and tenants to be able to get some of this relief that's available. So again, I think there's going to be a bit of a sigh of relief that with us as a nation moving beyond the COVID pandemic, we're also going to begin to see some normalcy between the landlord and tenant relations, though it'll probably be slow to start.
All right, I want to get to this always tense redistricting fight. Of course, redrawing the legislative maps happens every 10 years. There have been a couple reports of purported drafts of new maps drawn mainly by Democrats that would wipe out 2 GOP-held congressional districts. Representative Moeller, where is this remap process right now?
Well, right now, we in the House and the Senate are in an information gathering phase of looking at the new maps. As you know, we're required by the Constitution to redraw the maps after every decennial census, and that's what that process we're going through. We've held several public hearings throughout the state to gather information and hear from local mayors, private citizens, advocates, other people who are interested in good government to gather information to use to help draw those maps. And so right now we've collected a lot of that data, and we're working through the process to put together a proposal for new maps for the entire state.
Representative Demmer, Governor Pritzker on the campaign trail said that he would veto any map that wasn't drawn by an independent commission. He's kind of gone back on that. Do you believe this process is independent, bipartisan, is taking in the views of all sides here?
This process is clearly not independent, and it's not bipartisan. This process is exactly the same as we've seen in previous years, in which we have an attempt by legislators to pick their voters instead of the other way around. The reason the Constitution calls on us to draw new maps after a decennial census is so we can use that new census data to draw the maps. That data is not being used this time for the first time in Illinois redistricting history. Instead, estimated survey data is being used in order to preserve a political partisan advantage instead of using more accurate data.
So because that census report came in late, that Democrats are purportedly using a different set of data to base their maps on, Representative Ford, why not wait until that census data is there before drawing the maps?
Well, I think we have, by Constitution, we need to get this done. And that's the goal, to get it done by the constitutional mandate. I think that no matter how we put it, it will be very tough to have an agreement on the maps with Republicans and Democrats. So I think that we have to move forward.
Senator Barickman, might the GOP bring legal action if there is a map that, again, is based on the American Community Survey and not based on the census?
Look, I think the many witnesses that have been heard from during these public hearings that the Democrats, have, pointed to, those witnesses have said that they intend to sue because the use of bad data results in Voting Rights Act's violation of the U.S. Constitution's Equal Protection Clause. So I think we'll see lawsuits from those groups. But here's what's most important, Paris. Governor Pritzker promised to voters as a candidate that he was going to veto any map drawn by partisans. Well, we're seeing just that process take place. It's being reported that it's done in a secret room. The governor could stop all of this. He's the one person in the state who has an ability through his megaphone and through his veto pen to keep the promise that he made to voters and to veto this map. Unfortunately, I think Governor Pritzker is going to join a long line of politicians who say one thing as a candidate and do something else as when they have the ability to lead on it. And that's just really unfortunate that he's unwilling to keep his promise on this.
All right, well, this is obviously a very contentious issue, but we have a lot to get to. Representative Moeller, I wanted to touch on a bill for an elected school board for Chicago Public Schools. There's one backed by the teachers union that would have 21 elected members. There's one backed by Mayor Lightfoot that would give the mayor the power to appoint most of the members, the so-called hybrid board. The president of the Senate has asked for a sort of a compromise on this. Where do you think a compromise might end up?
Well, look, I represent a district that has all elected school boards as part of the local landscape. So I understand the desire for parents and voters in Chicago to want to be able to elect their school board members. And I think the proposal that was put forth by Representative Ramirez was a good proposal. And it was crafted after many months of negotiations and discussions with parents, the union, school board officials, and others. The proposal that the mayor put forth scaled back the number of seats that were actually elected. And I think that the compromise will be found somewhere in the middle. I think the bottom line, though, is that democracy is good. Education is vitally important, and voters and parents should have a say in who represents them on the Chicago School Board.
And Representative Demmer, speaking of education, the governor announced that because of better than anticipated tax receipts, that the state will have enough money to give public schools increased aid under the new expanded aid formula. What does that mean for public school funding across the state?
I think it's a positive step for schools across the state of Illinois. A couple of years ago, we got together and worked on a bipartisan education funding reform bill that pledged by the General Assembly to keep a commitment to adding additional dollars to local school districts. One, to make sure they have the resources they need, but also to ensure that local property tax payers aren't the primary source of funding K-12 education. So I think it's a step in the right direction. And I think really we should consider how this fits in with other federal relief dollars that some school districts have received, as well as what they're getting in local property tax support to ensure that we're making the appropriate investment in education.
So take those things into consideration when allocating the money. All right, we're going to have to leave it there for now, but we'll be joined again later in the program by these lawmakers to discuss ethics reforms, among a lot of other things. And now our thanks to State Senator Jason Barickman and State Representatives Tom Demmer, Anna Moeller, and Shawn Ford.